All right, today we're going to get into a little bit of youth athletic development. Um, I've been working with athletes for a lot of years now, youth athletes, and have learned a lot in that environment. Actually, it's probably one of the more challenging environments to work with. That, and then just people who are completely or very low movement literacy definitely challenges you the most to be a good coach. But the relationship side of working with youth athletes is one of the biggest challenges. And that's also somewhat personal to me. I sometimes struggle to simplify my language for them. So um, I tend to be more technical. I learned that as a young coach in high school when I helped one of my coaches run a kids athlete camp, and I was teaching them how to run the drill for defense, and they were like 6 years, no, maybe 6 to 8 years old, somewhere in there. They were under 10, and I remember that I stopped one of them and I pulled them to the side and I said, "Hey, when you do this movement, you need to, get low and shuffle side to side, keep that athlete in front of you." And he just stared at me like, okay. And then went back in line and just kept doing what he was doing. He didn't understand what I was saying at all. So the relationship side in learning how to, it's not dumb down your language, but simplify your language. Be able to speak to a young athlete um, has challenged me more than anything in my coaching career. And I don't even work with that young of athletes really anymore. That was just that one time. But the majority of athletes I work with are in the high school age range, sometimes a little middle school. But I get tons of questions or even demands from working with youth athletes, and then also having to balance that relationship with their parents, because a lot of times youth athletes aren't even coming in because they want to. It's mostly their parents want them to be training, or their coaches want them to train, or a team sets up a session so all the kids come in and they don't know what they're doing there. And so one of the biggest things that you need to learn as a coach of youth athletes is engagement. How do you keep these athletes engaged with training? And I think some of the things that you want to focus on is, one, creating the connection between what they're doing and how it's valuable to them, but then also making it fun and challenging. Fun isn't just play. There needs to be a level of play, and you could learn that. One of the good models of long-term athletic development, where I learned that from, was the IYCA, and learning sort of different levels of engagement and different levels of play from very young to older youth athletes. And but fun is also challenge. People like to be challenged, and the older we get, the more interested we get in um, trying to improve on a skill. So it's balancing those things. But the other important factor is relating to the youth athlete. Like, if you can, it's not like you're trying to make them like you, but you without crossing the line, you have to, become somewhat friends with them, as long as you don't cross the line of that professional relationship where they should be seeing you as a figure where they're learning from you. There's a respect, as well as like an authoritative position. I think you know what I'm saying. I'm struggling to put that into words right now, but you're trying to relate to them, and it, again, as an older person in life, it's harder to relate to the youth, because unless you're really up to date with pop culture, or just that what is up and coming and new, and things are constantly changing nowadays, more so than when I was a kid and even before that. So those two things, balancing the engagement side of it and then relating to the athletes, those things are going to be huge if you want to work with youth athletes. I would forget about the programming and the coaching cues and stuff right away. It was like, how do you put a program together that is going to be fun, engaging, challenging, and then you can also relate to them. You're not talking over their heads, but you're also not bringing up things that are boring to them and not getting them interested. Because, again, remember, you have to remember that they may be there because they were told to be there, as in, like, their parents brought them in and said, "We want you to do training," or their team brought them in and they didn't really have any interest in it. You also have to understand that youth athletes, if they're doing team training, or maybe they even are influenced into doing it, but they're just not fitness enthusiasts. There's a lot of athletes I coached who, once they were done playing their sport, they were done with fitness. Like that, those went hand in hand, and then they went on and enjoyed life in a different way. So you kind of have to understand that just because you have a passion for it for your whole life, that you shouldn't pressure that onto the youth athletes. You kind of have to meet them where they're at with that. So again, just to summarize in this, um, from my experience, that the two biggest things that you should start with when coaching youth athletes is engagement and and then relationship. So how do you relate to them, and then how do you keep them engaged in a process that they might not even be interested in the first place? If you agree with me, disagree with me, if you have any questions or comments you'd like, put them down in the comment section. Definitely like to continue the engagement, or hear maybe from your perspective what are the most important aspects to youth athletic development coaching.